Hello, folks. Good afternoon or good evening. Thanks for the patience. I mean, as Esther said, this is the last panel, but I think it will be interesting because we are speaking about money. So when Lorenzo asked me to moderate this panel, I was thinking, what is the goal of this panel? I'm a technical guy. I'm an engineer, aerospace engineer. I'm CEO of DMD Solutions. We do reliability and safety assessment for the aerospace products. So I love technical things. But as a CEO of a company, I painfully learned that money is part of the equation. So, I mean, you cannot just do a job and get paid. I mean, this is like something that doesn't work all the time. So for people like me, it's really important to understand how do companies make money, especially in the UAV sector, and where is the money, no? And especially something that I've heard a lot today is how can we scale, no? Because I mean, POC is one thing, but I mean, we have to scale, no? And or how to become an airliner, so how to really sell products. And in my life, I've seen that most of these questions remain vague. They are kind of smoky. So my goal is that we can answer to this question with a semantic that can be understood even by me. So that's a bit the goal. And another point, which I hope we can address with the time, is that, I mean, 2023 is not 2021 or 2022. Things are changed. I mean, inflation, interest rates, geopolitical issues. So it's a bit more difficult to raise capital. And so let's say, how can we do it? Good. Maybe exactly a couple of words about my company. Again, I'm Dario Martino. I'm Italian. I've lived in Switzerland. And now I'm in Barcelona. I created DMD Solutions in 2014 because I've seen that safety and reliability was something that I like in my life and was not done properly in the industry. So I decided to create a pool of professionals that can tackle this kind of issue in a professional way in the aerospace world. I'm coming from the traditional main aviation, but thanks to Lorenzo and Esther, since a couple of years I'm in love with the UAV sector, and I think that this is the future of a company like mine. Well, I mean, this is me. I would like to introduce also the other fantastic people that in this panel. Eric.
Oh, thank you, Dario. So I'm Eric Brock. I'm the CEO of Ondas Holdings. We're a US-based company listed on NASDAQ. We have two business units. There's Ondas Networks and then what we call Ondas Autonomous Systems. Just very quickly, the networks business provides wireless connectivity for critical infrastructure markets like railroads, utilities, et cetera, covering wide areas, bringing data capacity and flexibility so they can adopt new technologies in these critical markets, including drones. So that's Ondas Networks. Most of the conversation today, in more interest, I'm sure, here, is what we're doing with Ondas Autonomous Systems. OAS, we own American Robotics and Aerobotics. So we have these two business platforms. American Robotics is based in the US outside of Boston, Massachusetts. And then Aerobotics is based in Israel. Many of you are probably familiar with Aerobotics. We have two technology platforms. These are fully autonomous commercial drone systems. What you see here in the middle, it's got the AR logo on it, but that's the Optimus system. The Optimus system is, again, it's a drone in a box. We've got some particularly unique capabilities in terms of robotics in the docking station where we can swap batteries and swap payloads. What that means is this is infrastructure. It's 24/7 availability. And we also have mature payloads that are integrated so you can do, it's multifunctional. What I'd like to highlight about the system, and we'll kind of weave into this in terms of where we are in the markets and the investment cycle in drones, is that it is reliable, right? We've built this with a ton of experience, a lot of lessons learned along the way. But we have now a type certificate, FAA type certificate. We're their second small UAS to get this TC award from the FAA. And we are deploying this Optimus system for public safety and smart city use cases. And I'd like to highlight what we're doing in the city of Dubai with the Dubai police, where they're now deploying across the city. We just announced a deal yesterday to double the fleet to 8. So again, these are not POCs. This is commercial deployment, fleet deployment, and we're going to be bringing this technology to the U.S. via American Robotics. I'll say quickly, we also show the Iron Drone system. That's a counter-U.S. system. Happy to talk about that. And then just one more thing about our strategy and what we're doing is, I have an investment background. I'm very bullish on the drone economy, and I think what we'll talk about here is how are we going to scale the drone economy, and which is really critical, right? And I think we want to be one of those companies that can lead the investment, and it's not just about M&A strategies. It's all about ecosystem development. It's about partnerships, and it's about engaging with leaders. So I'm thrilled to be here, and that's a little bit about us.
Good. Thanks, Eric. Tim, what about you?
Thanks, Dario. Very briefly, I'm in aviation 41 years. Irelandia Aviation, I'm an advisor with Irelandia. Irelandia was the founder company of Ryanair back in the mid-80s. Our managing partner, Declan Ryan, leads a small team. I'm privileged to be in that team as an advisor. We're have been involved in investing in a number of airlines since the 80s. And since 2015-ish, have been involved in drones and the AAM space now. We're investors in Skyports, early investors also in Mana in Ireland. Now currently looking at the eVTOL sector as well, particularly cargo eVTOL and how that can be brought to Europe. So that's currently in our inbox as well. So I'd echo some of the points that Eric has made. Scaling, how this pans out over the next 2 to 3 years is really important for the sector. And I think probably as we approach the end of 23, I think 24, 25 are going to be absolutely key years, not just in drone, but the eVTOL sector and aerial cities. Exciting times, and we're happy to take any questions later on.
Excellent. Thanks, Tim. Marcus, you are looking at us from outside, no? A bit.
Yes, that's right. So I'm Marcus Rowley. I work for Falko Regional Aircraft. We're a commercial aircraft leasing company and manager. So I have to admit, I'm not an expert on drones, but perhaps I can give a perspective on how commercial aircraft money could eventually come into this space. So just a bit of background. So Falko was formed in 2011. It was a buyout of British Aerospace Asset Management. They were the Avro RJ aircraft with 4 hairdryers on the wings. And so the management team acquired those aircraft and sold them off. And eventually we raised third-party closed-end funds to purchase regional aircraft. And we define our sort of core market as 50 to 150 seats. So over the years, we've bought and sold several hundred aircraft, and we manage about 270 aircraft currently. And us, like everyone else in the room, we're trying to make money for ourselves and our investors. And so we do that through buying aircraft and renting them out to commercial airlines. And so what you have to do in leasing, obviously, is you rent them out. You have to collect the rent. So you need a credible counterparty on the other end. And then you need to get your airplane back at the end of the lease and find a new customer. And that is what operating leasing is. And so we can talk a little bit about how perhaps drone operators and manufacturers and the industry as a whole might need to think about that in terms of if they're going to have significant capital come into the space under sort of asset lending or leasing. I suppose I said I'm not a drone expert, and that's certainly true. That being said, we are very committed to accelerating the decarbonisation of commercial aviation. And through that, we're investing in companies that are building the technology building blocks and the infrastructure required to do that. We also have looked closely at the eVTOL space, and we're an investor and strategic partner of Eve, which is Embraer's eVTOL. So we work closely with Eve to help them, and then we're also working with them to build leasing models that will work for the eVTOL space and for other innovative technologies. So that's me, and that's Falko. So thanks.
Thanks, Marcus. And yeah, I like your perspective because I mean, a lot of us are your potential customer of tomorrow, no? And last but not least, Glen, I know you have very clear and good ideas about today and tomorrow for our industry.
Hi. Start out by thanking Esther, Lorenzo, and the team. Second year here at Aerial Cities, and never disappoints. Well done again to the entire team. My name is Glen Lynch. I'm the CEO of Volatus Aerospace Corp. We're a publicly traded aerial intelligence company. I'll explain that in a minute. Basically, we're traded on the Toronto Stock Exchange or the Toronto Venture Exchange. We have about 25 companies in total in the group, spread out across Canada, the United States, and the UK. And our primary activities are focused under the Volatus Aerospace brand as both value-added reseller, a solutions engineering company, and our primary focus is actually a drone service or aviation service provider. So we have in a collection, I think the majority of our revenues, about 75%, are generated out of drones. We have about 150 drones in our commercial fleet. And we have a fleet of helicopters and fixed-wing airplanes that we use specifically. Those are commercial piloted aircraft that are being used largely in oil and gas and in industry sectors where the remotely piloted regulations are not enabling the use of drones. Long-term intention is ultimately to replace our helicopters and aircraft with electric vehicles and eventually remotely piloted aircraft. Largely a data company. We have a geomatics organization. It's one company that centralizes all of the geomatics services for the group. And really today, based on the regulations where we are, the data is actually what we see as our product as a company. It's either delivering the data or ultimately facilitating others that are doing the same thing with the sale of equipment and training and so on.
Excellent. So thanks, guys, for the introduction. I like to go directly into the topic. So for me, the first question is maybe the most important for this panel. And so the question is for you, Eric. So if somebody wants to invest in my company, you know? So if you want to invest in my company, what you are looking for? Are you looking for the great tech? Are you looking for the small drone flying around? What are you looking? What is Ondas looking for?
Okay, good question. I guess if I'm looking to invest at this point in the cycle where I look at the universe and say there's not just hundreds, but there's probably thousands of drone companies. And I'll make a statement that there's too many, right? There's too many drone companies relative to customer activity. And what's today, and I'll get to more specifics, but what today is underappreciated actually is the spending level is high and growing really fast. There's a surge in drone services, technology spending, et cetera. Okay? But it's not showing up on any of the companies because there's too many companies. So when I'm looking at investments from here, I want to focus on companies that have technology that's maturing, they have services and customers that are maturing, and they're serving customers well so they can get repeat business. And I think that's critical at this point because if you have the new kind of whiz bang or you got a great idea, you're going to do it better than everybody else before you. You're still starting at the beginning. Okay, you might have a great idea, but to make that journey, which takes a lot of time and a lot of money, is going to be incredibly difficult. So what I'm saying is, from the investment standpoint, I think we want to focus on companies that are mature. And if they have a component, say, of a solution that you can integrate and scale, that's part of it. If they have unique talent and capabilities, that's important as well, because when you build a scale organization, you have to have technology, you have to put the services around it, you have to put the regulatory expertise around it as well, so it's a total solution. So if that's part of the puzzle, then that's great. But I don't think this is the part of the cycle, and we might not be there for a really long time to start to fund the early stage opportunities.
Okay, thanks. And I mean, to connect, the investor point of view with the industry, Glenn, you are, I don't know how many, but you are for sure one of the few companies that are making revenue already in this industry, And how can you reach this revenue, or how can you show to Eric that you are a company, well, maybe it's not your case, but a company like yours is profitable? I don't know if it's an English name, Is the drone the product, or is not? I mean, you were telling that actually the drone is not really the product, that you are selling.
So I think there's great technology in the industry right off the bat. The last several years, I would say we've been on I'll describe it the way my CFO does. He said he basically thought getting involved in a drone company meant jumping on board a fast-moving train. But he realized as an industry, it's more like grabbing a hold of a rocket ship, clearing the tower, and then trying to buckle up, because that's about what the industry's been. There's a lot of work out there for the drone industry. The problem we have is we haven't had human infrastructure. There was no industry. And a lot of the regulations come in, and the training organizations rush to catch up and try and enable the technology to do what it's capable of doing. I have a little bit of a different view on the regulators. Coming from a traditional or piloted aviation background, I think the regulators are moving faster than I've ever seen in 43 years in aerospace. So I actually am pretty proud to be part of the industry. They have a different job to do. They're both balancing, enabling our industry from succeed, at the same time protecting public safety, and they got a big job to do. And I think this forum's been really useful for creating some exchange of ideas. I know I got a lot out of this morning's panels, or this afternoon's panels. But I would say, I think one of the things we need to do as an industry, as we mature to the next level, we have to consolidate. There's no question. Eric and I both were friends, as well as living in the same industry. And we both talked to all of the CEOs in Canada, United States, Europe. I think most of the larger, mid-sized, larger players, that says a lot, really, when I say that, because a big business in the drone space is a small business by definition. But realistically, everybody recognizes the need to consolidate right now, hit critical mass, have more resources available to the businesses, and work our way towards that next platform of full autonomy, or at least enough autonomy that the human is on the loop. And we're moving, I like to say, from a one pilot, one helicopter, one pilot, one drone, to a one pilot, many drones type operation, or even more, many to many. So it won't be a one pilot operating 5 drones, it'll be 3 pilots operating 15 drones. Is where the unit economics makes sense. It solves some of the piloting problems, huge gains in ESG. And I think what we have to do as an industry is really focus on the service side anyways. And Ondas is a little different in that they're very technology oriented. Volatus, while we have some technical capabilities, we're really an operator. We're a service provider, a solution provider. So for us, what we look for is, where is the demand that needs to be filled? The big areas for us are pipeline, power line, railway, all long linear inspections. Offshore, because we can enable that with most regulatory environments will allow us to enable offshore. Arctic, which is a big subject in Canada, largest undefended border in the world, which is a concern for Canada. So areas that we can actually support these activities. I would say, for example, if I look at oil and gas, still largely supported by aircraft and helicopters, because we need the regulations and the technology to enable long-range, beyond visual line of sight activities, so we can disrupt what we're doing with piloted aircraft. In the power utility space, a little heavier focus on the use of drones for doing inspections on towers. It reduces the risk to human beings as you're inspecting, many of these big transmission towers have as many as 40 critical assets attached to them that need to be inspected. And of course, as our industry and as our globe electrifies, it's more and more important that this aging infrastructure gets regular attention. So those are areas that the drone business can actually jump into and, pardon my expression, go like hell, right? Lots of room for growth there, lots of revenue potentials in those space. It's really a bridge, though, because if you look at the power utility space, the next chapter of that is being facilitated with products such as what American Robotics builds, where you'll actually be operating remotely with nesting stations located at various areas to be able to provide 24-hour immediate response when they need to inspect and determine why they've got a failure in the system, or even just routine inspections. But big thing is that the time to commercialize, I think our industry is waiting for a magic moment. The moment's actually now. It's just, we have the dream of what we can do, and I think we all share that. It's unified in this room, what we're going to be able to do with these technologies. But what we need to do right now is realize that capital markets are tough, and it's very difficult for small businesses to raise capital. Not impossible, but difficult. Capital is expensive at the moment. This will recover. It'll get better in time. But the big thing is, as a technology companies, we really need to focus on driving ourselves to profitability. And profitability is not a word that's common across the drone industry. So I think we need to seize the opportunities where there's revenue available and scale as fast as we can as this journey continues to that full, advanced air mobility environment.
Excellent, Glen. Well, 2 words from what you have said that for me are important. The first is scale up, and we can discuss about it a bit later. And the second is something that I also learned recently. Again, pardon me, I'm technical, I'm an engineer. I love to make my safety assessment. Consolidation. So, Marcus, is consolidation important in our market, and how can you reach it? How can you do it?
Yeah, I think consolidation is going to be really important in this market. As I said, I'm not an expert, and I don't know how fragmented the market is, but it seems to me that it is. What I can say is that in order to lease to these companies, they're going to need a balance sheet, a good balance sheet, and that comes through consolidation. They're going to need diversified revenue streams, and that comes through consolidation. They're going to need scale and not only scale, but standardization, I think, is going to be really important as well. And that comes back to what I said before, that assets can actually be repossessed or redelivered from one company and delivered to another company. So standardization will also be important. So really, yeah, I think, as I said, scale and consolidation in order to put larger dollars to work as well. That's going to be hugely important, because to access that lower cost of capital people are going to want to put more dollars to work, and that's going to require consolidation so that can happen. So yeah.
Excellent, Marcus. And Tim, finally, what is your opinion? I mean, where is the money? Where is the money?
Wish I knew. Very interesting what Glen was saying there, and I'd echo a lot of those points. Scale has to happen, and I think the next couple of years will be, consolidation will definitely happen. And I think it's going to be a good thing as well. It's not a bad thing. 2 + 2 does equal 5. In Irelandia's DNA is disruption. So I was listening carefully to Eric, and you prefer mature companies. Declan Ryan and the family back in '85 thought that Aer Lingus and British Airways having a monopoly in Dublin, London was rubbish, and they were right. And they went in and reinvented the airline business. Yesterday, my wife flew to Malaga for €27.50 from Dublin. So on that point, and Bill and Glen's point, bring the costs down for drone deliveries and how that works. And a number of great things will happen in terms of use cases will start to flood in through the door. delivery costs and visual observers and these kind of things, that will have to change. That's not just my view, but I'm sure it's a view of a lot of people in the industry. McKinsey's are definitely of that view, that, you know, it's got to get down to something like 50, 52 cents for delivery. Autonomy has to happen. I think the regulators, just in terms of the regulators, and you are right, Glen, the regulators do deserve a shout out, particularly the very proactive ones. It'd be wrong of me not to say, I know the Irish Aviation Authority are here, they're rock stars on the way they've embraced drones and the way they're looking at eVTOL operations, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's not just it's everyone in the ecosystem needs to think differently. There will be casualties. It is a war. There will be casualties. Businesses will go bust. But ultimately, this ecosystem, I think over the next 5 years is going to be tremendous. I would say it's going too slow at the moment in various places. I think, and that gets investors nervous. BVLOS is not happening quickly enough. I do enjoy Lorenzo's rants. I'm slightly, I need to have more rants with you, Lorenzo, on things like BVLOS. But to steal from one of the guys at another conference earlier this year, I didn't know this. There was a Red Flag Act, Google it later, 1865 in the UK. And they used to send a person out in front of these new automobiles with a red flag because they were so dangerous, to warn people of the impending danger of an automobile. There's an analogy there of BVLOS, TDAs, temporary danger areas that we're doing for, so it has to happen faster, it has to happen at scale, and once that happens right, a number of unlocks will come. Skyports are already in the O&G space with drones. You're right about helicopters, you know, they're not going to substitute helicopters, but a number of more intelligent ways of using aerial assets can be done. I think my final word is on that. I think we're in a different geopolitical environment now. I think it's not just capital, but investors will look at all kinds of risk. We've got 2 awful wars a couple of hours from here. We've got access to capital, as has been referred to, is getting more difficult. I think investors generally, I don't think any of us on the podium would disagree, will just be looking for more definition in terms of returns and timelines and milestones. I think there has been a lot of silly money around for the last 8-10 years, and those days are gone.
Well, I totally agree with you, Tim. It's 2023 is definitely different, at least with respect to 2021 or 22, no? And I can see it also in my experience. But Eric, what do you think? Do these days are coming back or not? We are already in another phase.
Yeah, so there's no question 2023 has been incredibly difficult, but 2022 wasn't that much better, and 2021 wasn't that much better than that. So the silly money, we certainly had a cycle, which isn't uncommon with an industry that has a potential that the one we work in has. And I think that there's massive pent-up demand for successful companies in the drone sector. There's massive. And the reason is, it's simple. The TAMs are huge. It's not billions of dollars. It's tens of billions of dollars. But getting back to what the investors need, they need to see a path to is a scaled player. Because the reality is, getting back to what I was saying earlier, is you need to put the technical platform, you need to put the services, you need to put the regulations around it. You need to be able to operate the business because the customers are sophisticated. You got governments, you got large industrial companies, oil and gas, utilities, et cetera, right? So to service them globally and get the unit economics you need to drive down prices and improve ROI for investors, that's all critically important. So as we see in the capital markets, and it's not just the public markets, it's the private markets as well, they're doing their job. And their job is to choke the industry today because there's too many players. And from that, you're starting to see some of the leading technologies, platforms, management teams, service providers, and they're emerging. And they're becoming more obvious to the customers which, this is a cycle, right? This is actually a 10 or 20-year cycle. And as those companies emerge, the customers know where to put their attention because they want their revenue dollars or their spending, which is our revenue, to result in a long-term opportunity because a drone's valuable. So as you see that competitive strength is really going to be a winner-take-most market because of the complexity. So I think once those companies emerge, I think, and I can say this particularly for the public markets, the companies that get anointed here are going to have an incredibly low cost of capital. It's the exact opposite of today because investors can't tell who's who, right? That's the job here, is to really define where the winner is going to be. So I think, I believe over the next 1-2 years, today, and Glenn, you referred to this is an outstanding time to invest in drones. It's counterintuitive because we're all different levels of miserable, right? It's very difficult, but this is the time to seize, and that's the way we're looking at it.
Glenn, what do you think about it? And I have a question for you. Is because we were discussing it a couple of weeks ago. Is the drone market choking on their own success? What do you think?
Oh, I think definitely. I think a lot of it's we've got small businesses that have been going like hell again, and they're building up their receivables and they're chewing up their working capital. And one of the characteristics that we see in small businesses when we're doing M&A activities is a small business starts looking for working capital after they realize they don't have any, right? And it's, as most consumers know, the most difficult time to get capital is when you need it. You have to be ahead of that curve and you have to be looking for it. But I also agree it's a perfect time. If you look at the drone industry, the drone stocks on any of the publicly traded companies right now are trading at all-time lows, even though the companies are maturing very rapidly. Consolidation, the unfortunate thing about expensive capital is it makes M&As, it makes the money more expensive to get, but the industry condition today makes the acquisitions actually less expensive. So the price of buying companies and consolidating is less. On the flip side, too, some of that consolidation will be people that have really put their hearts and souls into this from the beginning. Kind of the trailblazers that went out there and, took their pickaxe and started picking away at the mountain, and they got tired and they stopped. People that have forged the way for the rest of the industry, some of those people will actually disappear, which is unfortunate, but they've made a dent. But I definitely think it's the right time to invest in the drone industry, because part of the challenge the drone industry has is they're getting busier and busier, and in fact choking on the lack of working capital. It's literally, an industry that's struggling with its own success.
Good or not, but however, that's your opinion. You're always quite straightforward. So, well, again, like I promised, I would like to speak about scaling up. So, in my experience, I've seen that you can generate a company can generate a revenue pre-scale, but it's quite complicated to generate profit, no? So, what I also have seen, and this is something that for me it's a lack of knowledge in the industry, is that a lot of people honestly don't know how to scale up a business. This is another league, another set of skill. So you have to pass actually from like a linear growth to an exponential growth, and this is complicated. Again, for technical people is quite complicated to understand. So how can you guys, what is the advice of you guys? I don't know, Marcus, you want to start?
Yeah, I just reflect on what was said earlier, because I see there's so many parallels between the drone industry and the eVTOL industry, but in terms of how they're capitalized, it couldn't be more different. You have several eVTOL companies that listed in the wonder years at multi-billion-dollar valuations, and these companies, they're all pre-revenue. They obviously don't have any P&L. They're spending billions of dollars each year to develop their product. And then on the other side, we have this very fragmented drone industry that is struggling with to raise money for their working capital, yet they are already generating revenue and to some extent profit. So it's just there's so many similarities, and the challenges are similar in terms of the airspace management and the technology in many cases. But it's just really interesting how those the access to capital is so different.
Good, thanks. Tim, 30 seconds because we have to go into the questions.
Very briefly, just, yeah, I think that's kind of true, what Marcus is saying. I think the enablers and the unlocks are important. On our watch list would be aerospace integration. There's a lot written about it. There's a lot being done. But I think, if we're talking about thousands of deliveries by drone in an urban environment every day of the week and more, that has to be resolved. And having visibility on that is a big issue for any investor going forward. Absolutely. Just as an example.
Good, thanks. So I think we can go to the questions. Do you think there is any investment attractiveness for UTM, U-Space Service, and who should finance them? Eric, do you want to take it?
All right, I'll give it a try. Not an expert in this, but I do have a view on infrastructure and sort of how that gets funded. So we don't have the automakers build roads, right? This is a public good. And it's leverageable, right? When you can have a drone economy and the services that are provided, it stimulates economic growth. So I absolutely believe government and government-sponsored spending makes a lot of sense. But there should be plenty of time. It's catch-22 because today, if you ask me if I want to invest in it, really can't because there's not enough activity to finance it, right, from a revenue standpoint. There's no visibility on that. So it's sort of like it's a chicken and egg dilemma because our growth as drone OEMs or service providers is limited because it's not there, right? So I think there's this early stage where the government has to get involved, and as you see traction, that's going to attract private capital. And I think, as infrastructure, you've seen a lot of the infrastructure in our country, a lot of hard infrastructure, but I think it's the same scenario, has become privatized because they've become, stable businesses with stable recurring revenue streams. So that's my view. I think early government funding is really required.
Thanks. So from Claudia, what needs to happen to move the revenue model from UAM service to the public, from a niche idea to something of wider interest that for the public will pay to use? Okay, this is interesting. Glen, what do you think?
You were supposed to point that at Eric, not me. Yeah.
It's my fault.
Yeah. All right. I'll try to answer that. I mean, I think that's a really big subject to unpack because it's not just the technology and ultimately how they pay for it, but different countries have different ways of operating, right? Canada, for example, is a pay-for-use airspace. NAV Canada manages the airspace. They're a not-for-profit corporation. But when you use the airspace, you pay for it. So, and then comes the next question was, right now we're talking about UTM. We were talking about this a little bit with Claudia, actually, during the break about UTM versus, ATM, air traffic management. Ultimately, it's the integration of the two that's going to make a huge difference down the line. And how does that revenue model look? So I think there's a lot of really unanswered questions. There's a company in Norway, Nordic Unmanned, and they have a regulatory guy who's got a very worldly view. He started his career in Canada. He's Canadian. He moved to Germany, worked in Germany for a while, then ended up in Norway. And of course, Nordic Unmanned has done some really interesting work with beyond visual line of sight. But he has a presentation, and it's called Learning from the Past, and it talks about how automobiles evolved. When automobiles were first introduced, we were still riding around on horses, and the infrastructure on the side of the street was, hitching posts and that sort of thing. And the next thing that happened is they built a car. And we were talking about that red flag earlier about, how you had to warn people that the car was dangerous. And that was the next evolution. And then there was the integration that started happening because, believe it or not, cars weren't allowed in many municipalities because they interfered with the horses. Well, fast forward a whole bunch of years, I don't see many hitching posts around anymore. And there's a lot of municipalities that horses aren't allowed in the roadways because they interfere with automobiles. So there was a journey that took place there that's almost worth taking a look at because we're largely following that journey. Right now, drones and piloted and remotely piloted aircraft are segregated, and eventually they won't be. To some degree, they're already getting to that point. So the question, Claudia, is it's a difficult one to answer because there's so many moving pieces right now. I think that would be my answer.
Good, excellent. Team, Eric, do you want to add anything?
Just picking up on Glen's point, it is back to the UTM issue. I think that is a big challenge. You've got various speeds going on. So you have regulators within regulators moving at different speeds. You have OEMs out there, and we're another one on our watch list is heavy drones with heavy payloads, long distance. So right now today, the airspace wouldn't be able to cope with that. The regs aren't there. But that's where it starts to get interesting as well in terms of use cases. You're arguably shifting up to 500 kilos of a payload, 500 nautical miles plus. That's where things do start exciting. And this is where speeds will probably start needing converging over the next number of years for this to happen. But again, all the brain power is there. There's a lot of capital gone in. There's a lot of clever people and engineers such as yourself, Dario, can figure this out. And when that does happen, I think that's when it starts to get really interesting. Between now and then, I think there's going to be some sharp speed bumps.
If I can just add something to that. When we talk about drones, we oftentimes think about little things. Then we talk about advanced air mobility, and we're talking about bigger things like the size of helicopters or larger, for example. But the reality is drones right now are being manufactured to significant size. The MQ-9B, for example, which has now been delivered to the UK, is a Part 23 certified platform, or at least followed the Part 23 certification guidelines to be a certified aircraft. There's an American company called Nautilus. I don't have anything to do with them other than the fact that I was their first customer, that's building a 19,000-pound drone with an 85-foot wingspan carrying more than 9,000 pounds of cargo for up to 1,000 miles, powered by a couple of Pratt & Whitney PT6 engines, retractable landing gear. The donor aircraft was actually a commuter aircraft, Beech 1900. So I think we're already headed there. The regulators are pedaling hard to manage that. The training world is coming along. A lot of work's being done at ICAO right now for licensing and to be able to enable the use of that type of equipment. But I think it's coming faster than we think.
Well, this Nautilus is for sure an interesting beast I would like to analyze. Good. The next question I think is for sure for Eric, no? If this is a great time to invest in a drone companies, what sort of growth metrics for 2023 would you get excited about an investment in a company? But before giving the word to you, I mean, for me, a metric which should be introduced, and maybe Lorenzo, we have to study about that, is some sort of technical feasibility. Because, I mean, great ideas, I've seen a lot of great ideas around, but, I mean, from an aerospace engineer point of view, there should be some reality check, and you should assign some sort of KPIs, no? And say, okay, this is, I don't know, 9 out of 10, no? And this is something I would like to add. But this is, again, my part. Eric.
Okay, so if you have product market fit, means you're not doing POC to POC to POC and hoping for the order, right? You're having commercial deployment, proven scalable technology platform, proven scalable services, and again, you have positive unit economics, you should be growing 50 to 100% a year, right? You should be. I mean, the market and the demand is there. So, and I think as you're doing that, you should also be able to show a path to profitability, because you're going to have fixed costs, your SG&A, your overhead, et cetera. But if you have that growth rate with positive unit economics, means your gross profit dollars are growing, you can legitimately show that. And if you're that company doing that, that's exactly what investors need. Okay? You will get a very high valuation because it's repeatable. You're looking at a 5-10-year surge in revenue. And he's getting back to earlier, because what I think we do in the industry often, but investors don't. On the other side of the table, they look for these platform adoptions. Okay, so we think of things linearly. Oh, if I sell 2 systems this year, I'll do 4 next year, 6, 8. No, you'll do 2. If again, you get product market fit because the demand is there, there's ROI for customers to deploy, you're going to see 2 systems go to 50, go to 1,000. Right? And that's the way platform technologies, whether it's the PC, the smartphone, the cloud, and you can name many, many others. That's the way this market will work. So specific answer, at least 50 to 100% in 2023, if you have product market fit.
Good. Glen or Tim or Marcus, sorry, anything you want to add?
Well,
this one?
I'd just add, that they're impressive numbers, but if you're going to do that sort of growth, you need a management team or that is ready to adapt to that type of scale and that type of change in scale. Because if you're a CEO and founder of your company, you may have a fantastic skill set, you may have an aerospace engineering background, or you may have whatever that background might be. But if you're going to expand at that sort of exponential rate, you and your team may not be the right team to actually lead a company that is 100 or 1,000 times bigger than where you started. So you might have to be open up to change there as well.
Good. We have 1 minute, so we can go to the last one really quick, because I like this question. Since drone capabilities exceed what current regs will allow, hindering widespread commercialization, do you anticipate the pace of innovation will decay? Glen, what do you think? This is maybe related to this shocking market, no?
Yeah, no, I'm not sure it'll decay. I think it's starting to mature a little bit. I know that all of the technology companies are working towards standardization. I think we're just at a kind of a new chapter. I'm not sure we're anywhere near hitting a plateau yet in terms of technology. I think certain technologies within our ecosystem are maturing quite nicely, but I think there's still a lot of room for technical advancement.
Good. Well, thanks guys for your patience. And I would say that for me was great to have this discussion. I've learned a lot. So pass the word to Esther, and thank you very much, guys.